Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I want to talk about game development because I think that Embark Studios is about to join the pantheon of AAA game developers, but on a fraction of their budget. Arc Raiders has achieved what many thought was impossible. It's actually gaining players weeks after release and in the middle of a release cycle dominated by Battlefield 6, Battlefield Battle Royale, and the upcoming Call of Duty launch. Arc Raiders launched this extremely ambitious extraction shooter experience in the middle of a very saturated release cycle during a global economic decline thanks to tariffs and on a fraction of the budget of most AAA games, yet despite all of these external factors, Arc Raiders has struck a chord with extraction shooter enthusiasts and casual gamers alike. As of me creating this video, it's averaging just under 400,000 peak players every day, with an average player count of probably about 350k at any given time. And what's more shocking is that it appears to be slowly increasing through word of mouth, like people are just buying and installing the game much after launch. To give some context, Battlefield 6 was expected to be one of the most hyped games this fall. It launched with a peak of about 650,000 players, which is fantastic and the biggest launch that a Battlefield game has ever had. However, over the last month or so, Battlefield 6's average player count has dropped down to about 325,000 players at peak and about 200,000 at any given time. So Battlefield 6 has already lost over half of its player base since launch. This isn't really abnormal for the gaming industry, and especially for like big AAA first-person shooters. I think that Battlefield retaining that amount of players still makes it a smashing success, but Arc Raiders, as of recording this video, currently ranks above Battlefield 6 on Steam charts, and even though they're neck and neck now, it looks like Arc Raiders might actually pull away and cement that position. I think a lot of this success may have to do with the fact that Embark Studios went with a $40 buy-in for the game. It's a relatively small amount of money that's comparable to purchasing a few battle passes, but enough money to keep out the majority of cheaters and free-to-play goblins. So it's probably also good for the studio that they're getting some of that initial buy-in like the Call of Duty sales every year, and then the players are somewhat more committed to Arc Raiders instead of being able to dip like in other free-to-play games. And Arc Raiders, I'm sure, is going to have some long-term monetization options and supporting updates and battle passes and that kind of stuff, but the launch is going very, very well. I'm really glazing Arc Raiders here, but I want to emphasize to any of you that haven't tried the game that it's fantastic and you should probably give it a go. I'm actually a little bit depressed right now that I've been able to play Arc Raiders so little due to my health issues. On a brief positive note about that, as of recording this video, I'm getting some function back in the fingers in my left hand. It would be important to note that this slight improvement still leaves me in a pretty bad place, but at least it's no longer getting worse. The overall trend seems to have been reversed towards slow improvement, so I gotta take that. That's just a win. That's a win. It's not getting worse, and we gotta take those. So moving along from Arc Raiders, because this video is really more about Embark Studios, I would be remiss to not remind you that Embark also released my favorite FPS game of the last maybe decade. The Finals is definitely the most fun I've had in an FPS since Overwatch. I went through a huge phase earlier this summer of shamelessly glazing the Finals and going over all of its qualities and exceptional polish for being a free-to-play game from a previously unknown studio. You'll find a bunch of videos and streams on this channel where I'm talking about all the best weapons for new players, or positive interactions with the community, or how the monetization system is one of a very few consumer-friendly ones in all of gaming, or maybe the fact that I'm addicted to the game. I'm kind of horribly addicted to the Finals, shamelessly, which is why when it came time to make this video, I decided to get gameplay from the Finals instead of diving into Arc Raiders. I literally almost burned my hand out playing that game over the summer. But to keep this video more on topic, the Finals came out about 2 years ago now, and it also launched with an insane amount of hype. I think it actually had a higher peak player count than Arc Raiders did at launch, or maybe at least during the beta, but unfortunately it got overshadowed by some very big fall releases, and specifically by Helldivers 2. The Finals, unfortunately, could not maintain its player base, and it's a medium-sized game now. It's still the best FPS on the market and significantly better than Battlefield 6 and almost certainly better than what Black Ops 7 is going to be. If you haven't tried this utterly amazing game, I would highly encourage you to give the finals a try. The point is, however, that Embark's first game was also a massive hit. It just didn't retain players in the same way that Arc Raiders did. I think this amounts to a truly incredible track record. A new studio released top 5 Steam games in a time frame just shy of 2 years in a row. One of those games has overshadowed one of the biggest FPS launches of the decade and is miraculously gaining players post-launch. This is something that the vast majority of well-established AAA studios with huge publishers and more money than God could not accomplish. Well, they at least couldn't accomplish it without releasing a game that's completely broken, whereas the finals and Arc Raiders were in quite good condition on launch. And you might think that would be the end of this video, but I did catch a podcast interview with the CEO of Embark Studios talking about their upcoming releases. And I was like, what? Upcoming releases? You've already got 2 massive live service games to maintain. What else could you possibly want? What can the dev team maintain over there? Well, both of their projects are going to be online games, but as the CEO says, perhaps not online in the same way that the finals and Arc Raiders are. One of these projects is described as having more edge to it than Arc Raiders, and certainly more edge than the finals. This is interesting to me because thus far Embark Studios has made very clean games. The finals has very little in the way of cursing or gore or anything like that. Their backstory, if you want to dive into it, can be quite dystopian, but you don't really encounter anything beyond a PG rating in the actual game. I mean, enemies just fall apart into coins. Arc Raiders is certainly more mature than that, but I would say Arc Raiders is significantly less edgy than Fallout, and probably less edgy than most other post-apocalyptic games. We'll keep this discussion brief for the sake of my sanity, but neither the finals nor Arc Raiders are very political. Maybe some criticisms there about allowing AI and machines to run rampant, but for the most part, they allow you to create your own characters however you want. There isn't really like a main campaign or overarching story that you have to play through and get some kind of moral lesson. These are just experiences. So, if Embark Studio is making something more edgy, my assumption is that's going to be more story-driven and quite literally has to push the envelope in some way to have that edge to it. Pushing up against any sort of societal taboo will always be in some way political, so I'm very curious if they're going to be able to maintain their apolitical experience type games while still being edgy. I feel like that would be a really difficult challenge for the writing team. The other project that the CEO talked about is described as being more conventional. There was a lot less said about this one in the interview, or I mean, there really wasn't that much said about either game, as they didn't have any clues or a lot to work with, but just that the second upcoming release is more conventional and that's it. So it's looking like Embark Studios might release 4 games in 4 or 5 years here, and if they get one more big hit on Steam, that'll be the most insane track record I've ever seen. I'm going to add a small amount of glazing for Embark Studios here at the very end of the video that's more relevant to me and to other content creators. I think that they have very forward-thinking programs for sponsored contestants on the finals and sponsored raiders for Arc Raider creators that want to work directly with the company. I'm not in either of those programs, but my limited understanding of them is that they offer a monthly stipend to creators so that some creators can potentially quit their job and go full-time making content on these kind of games. That's on top of all sorts of exclusive fun stuff and codes that they give out and reach out to the community and freebies and stuff. They have their standard Twitch drop tie-ins have been nothing shy of fantastic. There's the classic ones where you just get rewards based on watch time, but they also did a thing this summer to where if you gifted subscribers to any of their sponsored contestants' final players, then it would unlock skins for you in the game through Twitch, which I thought was fantastic. They shouted me out on their YouTube channel and brought a whole bunch of new attention to a video I made, and generally have been very nice and communicative. I know that doesn't necessarily change what might be your guys' experience of a studio as a customer, because you only experience the give money, exchange, and product back in less direct communication than that. But I will say that from the content creation side of things, it was a very big breath of fresh air. They definitely know what they're doing in that regard. So, given the success of these two game launches and Arc Raiders' success in retention, taking down Battlefield 6, the lack of bugs at launch, the low prices of the products, the long-term support of the products, and the positive community-focused aspects of Embark Studios, I genuinely think that they should be accounted among the true pantheon of AAA developers. This categorization is normally defined as a developer that has an extremely high budget or, significantly more resources than others and is using cutting-edge technology and has the backing of a huge publisher, but I would like to change that definition and judge them solely based on the quality of their works. For example, Warhammer Space Marine, I think Space Marine 2 came out, and that studio was considered a AA studio. They didn't have a quadrillion dollars like Activision does, but they released a higher quality game than the vast majority of AAA studios that year, and Embark Studios has basically done that twice in a row here. Embark has a team size that, to my understanding, is more reflective of AA and a budget that's more reflective of AA, but they're putting out multiple better than AAA products. I hate to poke fun at Ubisoft here, but Embark is actually releasing quadruple A games on a AA budget, which is incredibly impressive, though the downside for them is that many fans of both of these games, and probably especially Arc Raiders, because that's looking like the big ones, are going to set their expectations very high. At least I know I am. My expectations are through the roof, so whatever their next two games are, I'm expecting nothing shy of masterpieces. But for now, Old Drifter here is going to focus on getting function back in these little fingies so that I can actually play games for longer periods of time instead of these tiny little short bursts that I have to do now. And hopefully in the near-term future, we can improve that. Guys, that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.